What's going on, guys? Winter Wolf here, coming at you with a quick check-in about House of the Dragon Episode 2. Just wrapped it up and sat down at the desk. Gonna go over a couple of notes with you guys. I appreciate you coming back. I'm excited to talk about this show. I've had a great time so far through 2 episodes. If you don't mind hitting the subscribe button, ringing the bell for the notifications, I'd really appreciate it, because I'm going to cover this one wall to wall down the stretch. And then we're going to get into Rings of Power and probably do a little comparison to that show, because I'm not feeling the vibe as much on that one. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But so far, episode 2 for House of the Dragon, I liked it a lot. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm back on the Game of Thrones train. I think they did a lot of things well in the show, and I'm going to go over a few, so we might have a couple of spoilers down here. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, come back to the video tomorrow after you check it out, because I'd hate to ruin it. But there's a lot of good deep dive stuff to get into here with some of the relationships and world building that they threw together. I think I'll start off by saying one of the complaints I think people are going to have with the episode is that it's a little bit light on the action in like the conventional sense of combat, things like that. Like, this isn't a Red Wedding episode or anything like that. But what it does is it effectively pushes the story forward, and quite literally, we get a bit of a time jump. This episode is 6 months after the first one, so the world has changed a little bit, and they're really setting up the pieces on the board of what's going to carry, I think, the overarching plot forward through the show's run. Before I get into the details of the show, I'd like to point out that one of the things I think they got really right, and I know a lot of other people are thinking that they shouldn't have gone this route, but I'm digging it. They actually got back to a traditional Game of Thrones style intro, which was pretty badass to see the pieces coming up on the board and kind of, spinning around and doing their, jigsaw puzzle coming to life thing like the old intro did, where it moved across the different places on the map. I like that. I thought that was nifty. The original theme song is back in full effect. It's for me, it's like the Star Wars theme or Star Trek. It's like or Lord of the Rings, any of that stuff. When the Game of Thrones song comes on, I'm like, yep, boom, we're back in Westeros. Let's do it. I'm ready. Give me more Game of Thrones. So I think they're playing on my member berries a little bit with that, but I'm okay because I enjoy it that much. I love that piece of music. I haven't already said that. I'm good for them having done that. One quick piece of business aside, it came to my attention in the last few days that the actor playing Lord Corlys made some typical statements on Twitter about, we can accept dragons and elves and magic and whatnot, but if you see a rich black dude, we get out of line. I gotta just say, no, dude, sorry, just let me stop you right there. We all watched Game of Thrones. We all remember the character that was one of the slave masters in Vareen. He was a rich black dude. Nobody cared because that's who the character was as written. We care in this case, once again, not because you're black, not because you're rich on the show, not because you have power over poor white people on the show, but because your character wasn't written as a black dude. And that's not your fault for taking a job. I'm sure you're going to do a banging job on the show, but as an aside, put that shit away. Nobody wants to hear it because it's been demonstrated time and time again that it's not true, except for possibly the 0.0001% of people that actually just don't like black people. And you know what? Fuck those guys too. I hate them. I got no use for them either. But the character just wasn't drawn as a black dude. It doesn't make sense to have a black dude with blonde hair being from Old Valyria. It's just kind of silly, so just enough with that bullshit. But getting back to the show and all the good vibes. Opens with a really gruesome scene on the beach. We got a new villain being built up kind of in the wings of things. Rhyming. He's kind of got like a nautical theme going on. He's basically sinking Corlys' ships and then executing the Westerosi sailors by nailing them to driftwood on the beach and letting the crabs eat them. It was pretty disgusting. I loved it. It was Game of Thrones. It reminded me of early season Game of Thrones, and then some of the stuff with Ramsay Bolton. Like, dude, it was just cruel and inhumane, and it just fits the dark, awful fucking tone of the world of Game of Thrones. It seems like something a psycho would do in that world, so I'm with that. That works for me. We got into some sketchy stuff going on with Rhaenyra in this episode. It seems like they're going to kick up the girl boss stuff a little bit. She's definitely a pivotal figure in this show going forward, and that's okay. I kind of get the vibe of, the sibling or the child that was passed over for the throne. I'm not going to give it a full 100% girl boss. damnation, but it makes sense on the show for that kind of hierarchy to kind of be passed over. It makes sense that she's upset about it, but my point of contention with her being bitchy about that is nobody on the show ever seemed to doubt her ability to be queen or to be a leader or to be anything based on the merit of her talents. They just simply said in episode 1 that it's just been tradition that guys have been king. And they only had one occasion whereby it was put to a vote whether or not it should be Westeros who they picked or his cousin, the queen that never was, and they just happened to pick him. But nobody ever said she'd be bad at it. Everybody liked her. Everybody seems to like Rhaenyra. So, and if the world really had a problem with a woman being queen, they wouldn't have put it to a vote. They would have passed that and just given it right to the guy they gave it to. And they didn't. They deliberated and just picked against her. So it's not really ironed out in a way that makes it that way. She can only be like a handmaiden or like a seamstress or something. Like, no, people they respect her despite her young age. They point out here that she's only 15, but it makes sense for her to know some of the things she knows as one of her responsibilities as princess on the small council is she serves the wine. So she's listening. She's learning from people that are in the room. She's learning from the master of ships, the master of coin, the master of laws, her father, the king, her brother, her uncle, Daemon, when he was there as Lord of the City Watch and everything. So it makes sense that she'd be absorbing information and that she would be capable in a leadership role because she's going to learn that from having been there. So them putting it out there like nobody believes in her, it doesn't work yet until they introduce an a-hole character that actually says women have no place on the small council or leading or whichever. But they haven't done that, and they really didn't get around to doing that in Game of Thrones either to Cersei. So maybe we just pump the brakes on that a little bit. I will say this about the actress that plays Rhaenyra in this one. She cues up the waterworks in a couple of different scenes here, and it works. It didn't come off as contrived. In context, it was pretty good, so I was down for seeing that performance. I enjoyed that. But everybody was pretty much on their A game in this episode. The king was much better. I did enjoy him as well. The actor portraying Lord Corlys definitely dials up the anger at not getting what he wanted in the episode. It was pretty cool, and it has a pretty good setup and payoff. I'll get to that at the end. There's definite elements of politicking in the episode, which is great. That reminds me of old school Game of Thrones. We're trying to set up a balance of power here where they need King Viserys to kind of align himself with one particular house over the other to solidify power and put out the image that the crown is still strong, because they perceive there's mounting threats going on with the free cities and somewhere else. So it's kind of nifty to see that come together. It definitely reminded me of old Game of Thrones with the Stark daughters being paired off in certain ways with certain partners to kind of make those alliances with the Boltons or in the Vale or what was the crazy dude with Walder Frey with the Freys, the Blackfish, whatever his name was. So tonally they're definitely hitting Game of Thrones again, which I think is great. So I'm digging all of that all works. Now, one of the things I didn't like just in terms of the execution, there's a couple of occasions where the king is just outright disrespected in the small council. Once by Corlys, who gets up and storms out, and once by his daughter, who's not even on the council, but she storms out after getting news she doesn't like. And I just don't remember anybody ever doing that to Tywin Lannister when he was running shit. I don't really remember anybody except probably Cersei storming out on Robert Baratheon very early on in the show's run. But the power dynamic there always just seemed to be the king's in charge and we serve at his leave. So basically we're boned and stuck in the room until he's like, you can head out. So I wasn't really feeling that part. It seemed like it was a little bit out of place. But overall, it works with, I guess, the tone of what they're going for with there being loose cannons all around. One of the other kind of really gruesome things that came up in the episode is the king is definitely not in good health. In episode 1, we saw he had the boil on his back that needed to be lanced and cauterized. He's got another kind of gross decomposing injury on his finger in this one that they wanted to treat with maggot abrasion. Definitely kind of gross, but it's cool to see the maesters getting in like they did in Game of Thrones. I'm with that. I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of gross, but I'll take it because it was pretty good. Dialogue in the episode also pretty slapping. You can definitely see Martin's influence on it, which is great. It's good to see and hear things that sound like Game of Thrones. The way they talk, it's consistently like in character for that. There's not a line spoken in this episode that kind of pulled me out of Westeros, which I appreciate, because everything I've seen from Rings of Power so far it reeks of like the same kind of modern day Americanized, this is how we think fantasy dialogue works, but it pulls me right out when I'm hearing fantasy characters talk about, this is my truth. Like, no, it's fantasy. Like, knock that shit off. But all in all, guys, I think this was a good one here. Like I said, the gist of it is that we're putting pieces into position. It's the king's probably going to find himself standing in an awkward position because he kind of chooses to remarry in a way that does not have the full support of the small council, with Corlys in particular. I'll let you check out the episode. It also drives a further wedge between him and his daughter with the person that he chooses. When you watch the episode, you'll understand it 2 seconds in, so it's not a massive curveball or anything that comes out of left field, but it was pretty good there. I did enjoy that. I did enjoy seeing Matt Smith back in the episode again as Daemon. Part of the episode takes place on Dragonstone and then in another secondary location that you don't get until the very end, and it's cool to see the alliance building there because there's definitely power being moved around the board. It was pretty good. I'm enjoying it, guys. I think the performances are on point, the set designs are on point. Dragonstone in particular looked as good as anything I saw on original Game of Thrones when it comes to the locations that they had to CGI on. The dragons look pretty good. We got a glimpse of both of them that we saw in episode 1. They're back in this one. They have a momentary standoff as a certain tense-filled scene kind of comes to its culmination, which is pretty good. Another plus I'll give the episode here that I think a lot of people are just going to write off is the number of good tension-filled scenes where action happens without it being swords drawn. The one in particular that I thought was pretty good was Princess Rhaenyra talking to the king's cousin, is Lord Corlys' wife, and I don't remember the character's first name. It might be Rhaenyra, I don't remember. But they have a conversation about the order of things, and the princess is definitely doing her, the realm will respect me kind of thing, and then Lady Corlys, I guess it would be her formal title, but she's reminding her that the pecking order's kind of existed the way it has for a reason, and that men would rather burn the realm down than see a woman on the throne, and she references herself as the evidence of practice of that. And it was a good scene start to finish. There was passive aggressive venom being traded without anybody raising their voices or throwing a punch. So I won't give this episode the criticism that I think it's going to get from certain folks about it just being the kind of thing that I said about things like Resident Evil, about feelings in hallways or feelings at dinner tables. There's always something going on when these conversations are being had. There's a certain subtext that's going on, or people are meaning two things at the same time. So it was good to see. It's well done so far, guys. So unless they absolutely come out and just beat me over the head with the princess is the best as ever, like if she picks up a sword and wrecks 15 city watch in the next episode, I'll be like, come on, guys, you were better than that. You could have held out. But so far, so good with this. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. If you liked early Game of Thrones, you'll probably feel the vibe. I don't think this is something that people are going to turn away from. We'll have to check the viewership numbers along the way to see if there was any kind of drop off, but I don't think there's going to be. I think people are in this one for the haul. I think people are liking what Game of Thrones has done. They've introduced a number of new characters that seem interesting and that I think people are going to be able to grab onto. One in particular is the knight replacement for the City Watch that the princess picks. I think his name is it's Sir Kristen, I believe, the younger guy, the Dornish guy that she picks for the City Watch. I think he might be somebody that might be worth following as he goes forward. He seems like the traditional heroic archetype, which we all know those guys get boned in Game of Thrones. So he's probably going to get stuck to some driftwood and eaten by crabs or some shit. But that's all I got on this one, guys. I had a blast with this. I'm going to go watch some coverage on YouTube myself from a couple of favorite channels because I'm digging it. As always, I appreciate you guys checking in. I'm sorry this one ran a little bit long, but I did enjoy it, and I'm happy to talk about things that I enjoy. So if you don't mind, hit the like button, sub to the channel. I'm going to get down with a couple of new shows also going this week. We're going to continue She-Hulk, and we're going to pick up Rings of Power. There's always something going to be happening in the Winter Wolf's Den. And I appreciate you guys coming through, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later.